Hello, Brick Sculptors, and welcome back to Brick Sculpt. This is Chris, and I have an exciting new video for you today, one I've been procrastinating for a while. This is rock work, tips, tricks, and techniques. I've got a lot of awesome stuff to share with you today. I'm going to go through a few different ways of doing rock work, some of the ones I like, some of the ones I dislike, and kind of share some stuff with you to hopefully inspire you guys in your own mocks. Now, the first method I want to talk about is probably my favorite method, and that is burps and lerps. This, in the world of Lego, is what we would call a burp. That acronym stands for Big Ugly Rock Piece. And yes, they've been around forever. They are big, they are ugly. That's a burp. They also have the lerp, or the Little Ugly Rock Piece, which looks like this. Now, burps and lerps on their own are kind of boring and kind of generic, but they have endless potential, and let me show you how. Probably the simplest way to use these is to link them. If you take a burp or a lerp, you can put bricks down here in these corners and you can make a row of them. Well, that's a little better. You can make a nice big mountain range, a cliff with it, but it is still pretty generic. These are also designed to be stacked, where the lerp traditionally was meant to go on top of the burp. Doesn't have to. You can go next to it, but they stack very nicely as well. Now, Lego also makes a corner burp. I don't know what the exact nickname for that one is. I'll put a picture right here. I own a few of them, but I do not want to dig them out of my city. They are deeply buried in my rock work in my city. And Lego also recently created this piece. This piece, in my opinion, is basically useless. We'll talk more about it as we go. Now, what do I love about burps and lerps? They're generic, they're boring, but they make an excellent foundation to build off of. You see, when you're building rock work, height is super important. And there's lots of different methods and different pieces you can use to get height, such as door frames, things like the scaffolding or these taller posts that don't cost a whole ton to stack a lot of. You can also do things like Duplos and all that, or you can just straight up build bricks. Now, the problem with these methods is they're all flat and they just attach on the top. They don't give you anything to work with on the front. Now, you can get creative with bricks and you could stair step them to give you some more texture here, but it's very uniform. And if you're going to start to make more unique patterns, well, you might as well just use a burp. And that's why I don't like this piece. This piece has this detailing on the front, but you can't do anything with it. It's basically no different than a door frame. It gives you this little bit of detailing, but if you try to put multiple, well, that looks terrible if you did a whole row of these. So I don't really care for this piece. Now, these usually come in more like kids' play sets, and so I understand why it exists, but for building highly detailed mocks, not one of my go-tos. Now, let's say we want to take our burps and lerps to the next level. Well, there's a lot of things we can do to hide the ugliness and boringness of the burps and lerps. The first method, plants. You can put plants all over these, and there's lots of different types of plants. Just these branch pieces plug in very nicely because burps are full of hollow studs. So they'll stick in anywhere on the burp or lerp. You can also use some headlight bricks or snot pieces to put some of these pieces going out sideways. 3-leaf pieces, I've got a little water feature coming down the middle of this burp and lerp combination. Bamboo pieces work great. Lots of different stuff you can do there just to make it look less generic. Now, this is a small step in the right direction. It looks a lot better than this, but it's still fairly generic. If we want to go one step further, we can incorporate slopes. Now, buried in this pile of slopes, believe it or not, is a lerp. Very little of it is showing on the outside, but that's okay. Like I said, this is a great base to build off of. This portion here is the lerp, up here is the lerp, but pretty much the rest of this is covered in different bricks. But this here can integrate right next to this burp, snap it down, and you can make a cliff pretty easily. Nice step in the right direction. Now, let's say we want to go even further. Well, we can incorporate smaller slopes and change the angles. Something like this. This is also built around a lerp. Again, very little of the lerp is showing, if any of it. It could be completely covered. I don't remember how I built this, to be honest. But you can see how it's a fantastic foundation to build off of. Try and build something like this, starting with one of these. You're going to basically be building a solid thing of bricks underneath it anyway. You don't even really need that piece. So the lerp, or the burp, is a fantastic start for one of these constructions. I like to think of the burp and the lerp the same way I like to make chili. I'm not the greatest cook, but I know a few hacks to make it go better than it would otherwise. And one of the ones I do is I go to the store and I buy the bag of chili mix. And I know you can eat it just as it is. Maybe you add ground beef to it or something like that. But it's not the greatest. So you buy the bag of chili mix. That's the burp. And then you add a can of diced tomatoes, a can of tomato paste, 3 cans of beans, some ground beef, maybe some more spices, and you have a pretty decent chili. Anything goes in chili, really. But that's kind of how the burp works. You start with your chili base here, and you dress it up however you want. Here's another great example. On this one here, maybe we want to make it come more outward, like maybe more of a sand dune. Well, we could very easily just attach some snot pieces to the back of it. In doing this, we can now attach it to the ground and have a snot lerp. Yeah, we're going to have fun with the acronyms in this one. Let's say we want to build on top of this too. You could take snot pieces, snot in, snot out, and now we have back to standard grid basically. And we can put little plants on top of our sand dune. Because we have these open studs facing forward, we can also put little roots and stuff in here. So much detail you can put in there by using these lerps. And of course you can build bricks on this and make this any shape you want. Now also on the idea of snot, you can take a burp or a lerp in the normal position and snot off of it as well. For example, you could take some pieces like this, slide them down into a channel like that, and you can start to build plate off the front. I've already constructed some, and I'll show you how I can transform this burp into something really good looking quite easily. Check this out here. I've got my snot pieces on the back, plates and tiles on the front, along with some slopes and angles. That'll slot right into there. Maybe I'll take another little piece here, stick it on top to connect it. And over on this side, maybe another piece here with some snot action. Look at the detail on that rock work. And it's built right on the front of a burp. It just gives such a great starting point to build so much detail. You know, the smaller rocks are at the bottom, and you can get into bigger, chunkier rocks as you go up. You can really have a lot of fun with this. Now that's enough about burps and lerps. Let's talk about a few other methods. One of the methods I commonly see in mocks is this one here, where they use these angled pieces and just kind of stagger them to give it kind of a cliff look. Now this is not my favorite method, but it does work well for large-scale cliffs. The reason I don't like it so much, it gets a little bit redundant. If people do really large cliffs in this, they look very monotonous. It's a lot of the same thing happening. Now I understand why they do it. Doing something like this technique over a very large cliff would be incredibly tedious and require thousands and thousands of very small parts. But that's the price you pay for detail. When building a method like this, you're going to use pieces like this. Small slopes, double version. Taller slopes, also double versions, and even taller. And then you have your kind of anti-slopes here that sometimes will stick out. You also have tall anti-slopes. I would use the anti-slopes sparingly, where they come out over, because it might affect the look of the rock work a little bit. But I think throwing them in here or there does add a nice effect to it and give it a little more dimension. And then you're just going to want some basic bricks. You know, blocks, 1x2s, 2x2s, 1x1s, angles work good, and also some of these taller ones fill in nicely, because this is a very linear up and down rock type. So these taller pieces really come in handy when you're building like this. It's also not the most rigid. I do have these kind of connected just by a tile here, but there's really not much connecting the layers of these. So as you build taller, that is something to consider as well, is finding something to attach it to in the back will definitely be helpful. Now another cool method I like to do is this one. And this is just going crazy with plates. All kinds of plates in different angles, slopes, styles, and look at that, I even snuck a sugar grid right in the middle. I don't recommend doing that unless you like headaches. That's a lot of work for very little payoff, to be honest with you. But I did put that piece in there on a sugar grid just to show how you could incorporate an angle. You have to kind of bury the edges and get it down in there, but it is possible. The cool thing about this method, this would be a snot method, so you could stick it to a wall if you want a very steep cliff, but you can also put it this way and have like a rocky shore down to water, if you're just doing it that way. I see a lot of mock builders use these angle plates for beaches. They'll do them in tan, dark tan to make sand or wet sand. And then they also work great for rocks in either gray, dark gray, brown for mud, green for grass. Lots of different things you can do with this. But that is a great way to make really detailed rock work. It does take a lot of pieces. And to show you just a few of the different pieces you might use with this, these are some of the popular ones here. Lots of different wedges, both opposing sides. Pieces like this, maybe some of these small tiles with the corners cut off work really well. And then, of course, just basic plates, tiles, all kinds of things like that. Mix it all up, layer it. You can see this gets quite thick. Some of this is because I had that sugar grid in there, but you don't really see this stuff anyway. And you can make for a really nice rock wall or flat rocks. Now this last method I build with quite frequently. When I'm doing taller, more cliff-like rock work, I usually do burps and lerps. When I'm doing flatter, more subtle rock work, I typically use this method here. Now this is quite similar to what I did here with the wedge plates, but I use different types of pieces. And I like this because in my builds, I like very few studs showing. I know some builders love having a lot of studs showing, and you could argue it adds detail on the rock work, but I actually like to have less studs showing in a lot of applications. And this is just a whole bunch of different pieces put together to make rocks. And just like this method, these can be a wall if you want to go up higher and make more of a cliff, but I mostly use them more as flat rocks. And the biggest application I use this for is for smaller rocks. Here's a good example. Lay a couple plates down, just surround it by slopes, and then add some cheese slopes in there and other pieces, and you have just a nice little rock that you popping out of the ground, surrounded by some greenery. Fits really nice into a forested build, like my city. Now, the pieces you're going to use for this can vary drastically. Here's a selection of what I would recommend. Cheese slope is a must, and these 1x2 curves are also a must. Outside of that, the double version of each is helpful for adding larger sections. Curves like these are also useful. And then you're just going to want a huge assortment of small plates, tiles. Angles are always good. These corner pieces are super valuable when it comes to building like this because they can solve so many little hard pieces to incorporate. I really like the quarter cut 1x1. This could be very handy if you want to add greenery because you can incorporate the open stud. This is a 1x1 by 2/3. I did a whole video on this piece. I'll link it at the end of this video. But that could be really handy because you can actually attach things. You know, one of the biggest problems with stuff like this, you can't do anything that plugs into an open stud without adding another piece. These ones, if you bury them down in the rock work, you'll have that open stud that you can put plant work in or whatever you want to put in there. Well, I hope you guys liked this video. I hope you found it useful. If you have any questions, please leave them below. I'll do my best to answer them. If you like this video, please like and subscribe and do more just like this in the future. That's all I got for this time, and we will see you next time.